Again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Streamlining the Army Tuition Assistance Program, brought to you by this Kansas State University, and they're going to be sharing their blueprint for simplification. My name is Sarah Pell, and I am the Associate Director for MEC. A little bit about MEC in case you aren't aware. MEC, the Midwestern Higher Education Compact, is a nonprofit organization and was legislatively created over 20 years ago, and it serves, of course, the Midwest Census region, which are 12 states. We're actually governed by 60 commissioners, and we have commissioner alternates who will represent those states who are part of the compact. As far as compacts, we are one of 4. We've got other ones in the West, South, and Northeast. And one of MEC's strong points is convening people, bringing them together from various different groups and organizations, higher ed, state agencies, federal agencies. We work with a lot of key not-for-profit organizations, and we bring folks together so we can learn more about the promising practices out there, policies, legislation that's going on, and really set to help military-connected students to meet their educational goals. Next slide, please. If you're interested in learning more about the MEC military initiatives, if you're looking for our prior presentations, we've got 32 that we've done over the last several years, and you can access those with that link. And if you want to be kept in the loop about additional webinars, you can register for that at the MEC page. If you go down to the bottom of the MEC main page, you can see a subscribe link. Click there and you can register to get all of the updates. Next slide, please. I am very happy to welcome our presenters from University of Kansas. We've got Kelly Brundage, who is the University Registrar. We have Kimberly Sablin and our buddy Dominic Barnes, who is our Military Student Services Coordinator at Kansas State University. So I'm going to turn it over to Dominic.
Thanks, Sarah, and everyone for attending. I know this is a topic that everyone has some personal experiences with. If you were around using TA at the beginning of 2021 and went through this. So let's get into the presentation. Next slide. All right, so the flow today will start with the problem, where I'll talk about challenges we faced with the changeover to Army Ignited, starting with the impact on student support. Then also Kimberly's, I'm going to mess up your name. Kimberly will talk about her challenges in the sponsorship office, and then our registrar, Kelly Brundage, will talk about how she adapted our systems to help us deal with the issue and get ahead of the problem. Next slide. So as many of you know, any school with students using Army tuition assistance felt the impact of the change from GORMED to the Army Ignited website. Students, schools, and Army Education Services were all jarred by the initial failure of data transfer from the old website to the new website. The Army took unprecedented measures to put measures into place to keep soldiers in school, but the measures really they weren't enough to protect anyone from all the impacts of the changes and the challenges. Some soldiers didn't receive TA and still haven't, going back as far as last spring in some cases, and new problems are occurring as we move forward with Army Ignited. Next slide. So I thought, how can I oversimplify as much as possible the problem that we've all encountered? So I thought, well, I'll put together a Venn diagram and we'll see how it goes. So this my attempt here is to capture some of the problems experienced by soldiers, schools, and the Army, and where we interact with each other. For soldiers lost confidence in a program that they have to trust implicitly. They lost confidence in the Army TA program as they failed to receive TA funds for classes, couldn't get TA funds for upcoming classes, and in some cases they lost hours of their TA that they only get 16 per year, and some of them just were eaten up by mistakes generated by the Army Ignited website. There was confusing guidance put out through the Army for soldiers to refer to. The slides they provided were not clear. At K-State, several of our students in the graduate programs gave up on TA completely, and they finished their degrees using their GI Bill benefits. Schools, we also received unclear shading guidance as time progressed. And then that frustrated students. We didn't have answers and they didn't have answers. And that caused some to stop out and drop out. Some students feigted some mounting debt and turned to student loans. That was not part of their plan. And the sudden shift to the websites, even though they did provide us some slides to reference what we should be doing, it didn't really prepare us as a school for new processes and timelines. And the heavier workload for supporting soldiers with tuition assistance, where we had to start creating documents from scratch instead of uploading documents that we had for student degree plans. We had to use Excel, which is not a user-friendly program if you have to save it and then reopen it. And then you lose, if you have numbers that start with zeros, they go away. And then what do you do? Overall, that's probably just scratching the surface, the tip of the iceberg of problems that we encountered, probably all of us encountered. Next slide. So the impact to student services that I experienced in my office, and then also in the offices of the Army education counselors here on Fort Riley, and I'm sure that their experiences are shared at every education center on an Army installation around the world. You know, it became challenging to provide tuition, and some soldiers couldn't create accounts. Schools couldn't create accounts. There are still schools that are having challenges creating accounts. And in the past couple of days, soldiers haven't been able to create new accounts in Army Ignited. It's an acknowledged technology problem that we as schools and the soldiers and the students just have to wait until it's resolved. Problems with overloading courses and degree plans, and then the normal process of TA payments was delayed. One thing that's not on the slide, and I looked a little bit more into it today just to confirm, Army Ignited does not actually have a help desk team. What they do is when you submit a help desk case or a snow case to Army Ignited, if it's not a technology issue, they redivert that help desk case to Army education centers on military installations, and the counselors who are there to help soldiers create accounts and ask their education questions now also unexpectedly and without preparation had to answer and resolve help desk cases from around the world. An example of the impact that had here on Fort Riley for most of 2021 until we got into about halfway through the fall semester, there was a constant list of about 10,000 help desk cases that Fort Riley counselors were expected to resolve just at this location. Schools and education services are given different instructions and different information from Army Ignited. So the fact that I have an office for K-State and an Army Education Center means I can walk down the hall and ask questions and resolve different points of information and learn what they know. And they also don't know what we're being told, so they can learn from us. But for anybody that's not in that particular situation, it can be very confusing. Students, one of the concerns that they shared with me is that the Army is using this exception to policy practice to go through the websites and approve tuition that's been uploaded, even if the soldier missed requesting TA before the class started or didn't even know they had to do that. As we move down and further on in the year, they're concerned that soldiers will just get out of practice of even requesting TA and expect it to be automatically approved. And so that's a future problem that all of us will face, and we'll have to get ahead of that. Education services, Army installations now are required to block out a period of time every week, about a half a day, and not doing any walk-in support for soldiers. All they do is answer SNO cases, help desk cases, and handle TA issues. Next slide. Okay. Then I'll hand this off to Kimberly, who talked about the sponsorship office.
Thank you, Dominic. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. So I just want to make it clear where I stand in this process. Once Dominic uploads all the information into Army Ignited and the TA is approved, that's when I step in to do the invoicing and the assigning. So this is more for the billing part. The issues that I came across when Army Ignited was first launched successfully was that there were features from GoArmyEd that didn't carry over, such as the ability to export the list, sort it, and just keep it organized. In this new system, you couldn't even sort. There were multiple duplicates, and it created an issue for billing. So my strategy was to create an Excel document that I took the time to enter every single TA that came through at the time. And what I implemented was that this spreadsheet, this working document, would get updated once a week. So we have a team member who goes into Army Ignited and reviews all the TAs sitting in the pending, and then all the TAs that have moved over to be able to invoice for. This spreadsheet has the student's name, the course name, the cost, and it is tracked by semester. So I had to create a system that worked for the way our office did the billing. And that's something I would recommend, is sitting down and taking the time to look at how you do your billing. I think it's pretty general. I'm not sure, where you just go in and you add them to the invoice. But if you're not tracking it correctly, or you don't have a system in place to track it, you can duplicate the charge on the invoice, and then the Army overpays, and then you have to turn around and refund it. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that noticed it, but the duplicates pop up even after a course has been invoiced for. So say, for example, I invoiced for spring 21 for student A, they paid it, and the next month, that exact TA for student A is back in the system. If you don't have a document to track that you've already invoiced for that, that's where all the financial issues can come into play. So that would be my best advice, is just to create a system, a working document if you need to, that tracks specifically what the TA is for, what semester it's for, and then track that it's been invoiced or track that it hasn't. And that's really what I wanted to speak on, is just kind of my idea of how to keep your invoicing from getting messy or from owing too much back to the Army. And that's really what I wanted to speak about. So I'm going to pass it over to Kelly, our registrar here at the university. Next slide.
All right, so we came up with a couple solutions and had to really think outside the box. For kind of full transparency, our military TA population was not well tracked at K-State because we relied on the ability to be able to go back into Go Army at any point in time and see who we had interfaced with. And so that's a little bit of a challenge when that system goes away. And we had some extracts, but maybe not enough. And so we really thought outside the box in order to get to the quick fix that the Army came up with, which was the exception to policy, the ETP. And so we pulled Dominique into the mix, who is our military TA coordinator for the university, but was kind of at the time focusing on a little bit of a smaller population, not our whole military TA landscape, as well as maybe necessarily every Army student we interface with, although he probably has about 90–95% of them that affiliate with K-State. So we had a small group that was handled in some other buckets, and we brought him into the mix. And so when we looked on this, we looked at some ways immediately working between our sponsored programs area, our division of finance, where Dominique is housed is in our global campus division on campus, and connecting kind of back to the registrar's office, who holds responsibility for the military TA population currently, at least the data and the high level processes. And we worked through how do we make this blanket exception work, because as you can see here, obviously, and as we all know, this was very confusing. It was changing like every 3 days, give or take. Dominique was helping manage and monitor that on our side and sending lots of information to us as we were trying to navigate through, right? Like none of us could figure out what was going on with payments because then we couldn't even get into the systems yet. There was a rolling process to get into the system. So sending these ETP lists was somewhat manual initially, right? Or we needed to be prepared to engage back into the system. And as Dominique alluded to a little earlier, right, we have some students that still, a year later, have not had payment. As the registrar, I will tell you, and this kind of leads into our next slide, if you want to go ahead and move that direction into the next slide, is we have also thought a little bit outside the box. I am the chair of our university late withdrawals committee, and we've had some of these students come forward who are like, I need to drop the class, right? It has not been paid for. There's problems. I stopped attending it because it wasn't paid for, but the class was still sitting on the record. And so we have actually worked knowing what has happened in this structure. This has become an approved exception in the process without having it to go to the full committee, because it is not their fault that Army Ignite AD did not go the way it was supposed to. And so when these students present, we start to work through that structure a little bit to figure out, are they one of these students still sitting in this ETP bucket and no payment has come forward? What's the best possible solution? Working with their record, helping the student be successful. We also have some students that have graduated and have pending bills, right? So we're trying to help them through that landscape as well. As I mentioned, right, the registrar is the main office for all military students, but we rely on this team, Kimberly, Dominique, anybody else we can pull into the mix of how we will go about working through this. So one of the other solutions was I had to get creative and figure out where can I get a master list for Dominique so we could figure out who first and foremost needs to be on that ETP list, right? And who might still have pending things. And so we kind of went working in reverse, right? As it wasn't even just a spreadsheet. I worked with our finance area to say what I know about these students is they commonly through Kimberly's area, when we identify them for a semester and they're using military TA, we actually code some things. So because we know their payment only comes quarterly, right? That's how we invoice and interface. So their payments are delayed. So they have some waivers, so they're not accruing a lot of fees because not their fault. We're still waiting on the tuition payment from the Army. So we were able to trigger off of some of those known things we had in the system to find who's our current student population. Who are some of the students that had those codes in a previous semester, may still be active at the university, just didn't use TA, right, in the semester we were looking at. So we pulled them all together and compiled them And I sent the list to Dominique, and he works the magic, which you might be able to share, as we started to dig through who do we need to know about, where are they, tried to marry that with data we had in the system of how long's it been since someone's attended, or did they graduate, or do they have outstanding bills, right? A lot of manual, a lot of trying to marry with our data. And that's what I worked on. I have had the privilege or honor of being at several institutions in my career. And so was able to bring a lot of my prior experience with VA and military, and then being able to leverage Dominique's background. He's actually currently housed on one of our military bases in the area, Fort Riley. So we have a direct connection to a large group of our Army students who are living and breathing this. He was able to bring us living, breathing examples just in time, instead of kind of hearing through it through phone calls or trying to get students bounced around. And so we worked hard to streamline administratively, that they had one point of contact to work through. They didn't have to bounce through people, that Dominique could bring forward those issues. And then as much as possible, funneling up administratively. All three of us report to different VPs. We made sure all of those VPs were aware of what's going on and had them all invested in and on board with, we need to do whatever we need to do to help these students, because we do know there's a resource there. It's just not their fault that the system did not quite go the way it should have, or how anyone anticipated it. Good news is this has resulted in, in the solution, in some future things that we're working on of trying to, where were our gaps in some of the data areas, and how can we build this up and make it stronger? So that some of the things that we ran into, it was like, oh, we didn't think of maybe actively knowing who was a TA user at any point in time, and they just happened to not be using in that semester. How can I track that better? Instead of having to scramble a little bit and try and retroactively deal with that. So with that, I'll hand that over to Dominique for the next.
This is a snapshot, probably still a little simple, oversimplified. But I want to try to capture our processes and our touch points with our students using tuition assistance, which also spills into our regular processes for all students. So you'll see with our Office of the Registrar sponsorship in my office, under the first column under TA, we are proactive in preparing for students before they come to the university by streamlining systems, having clear and functional communication processes with phone calls, emails. You name the type of communication process you have access to, and we're using it. So we're ready to onboard students as soon as they reach out to the university with questions about becoming students. And then next column under recruiting, I stay in touch with not all military connected students that come to K-State, but now as a designated point of contact for students that are going to use tuition assistance. My contact info is available in multiple locations on the website. Office of the Registrar is developing and advancing our websites to make sure they all work together, and that's in coordination with administration or admissions. And then under the admissions, we are now working to get voluntary self-identification for military connectedness in some form or way for all new students that come to the university. And then I maintain as a point of contact for recruiting and helping with admissions right here in my office at times, and as a resource for other offices. And then we move into enrollment and financial support. Again, our main three speakers here today are all deeply engaged in that process to make sure that we can solve issues as soon as they come up and prevent them as soon as we know that they could happen. And then the last step, you'll see that every office now, it's important for us to collect data. We need to work on improving our know who are our military connected students, whether they're veterans or active duty, using TA, and all working together to build a better understanding of our military connected student population. Next slide. I have a final comment I'd like to throw out before we open up for questions, or if Kim or Kelly have something final to throw in. One of the recommendations I got today from a counselor here at Fort Riley, where she said that they've changed some of the things that they do as far as how they operate. They're trying to reach out to schools to identify who in the schools that they support actually processes tuition assistance. There's 7 schools here on Fort Riley, so that part's easy, but they support schools from all over the country. Even someone in Florida reached out to them yesterday and asked for help with a student who is attending another school, but that support request went to Fort Riley in Kansas. So they're trying to identify who at all the schools is the TA person. So they recommend that that person is highlighted at your school and easy to find. And because what they like to do is be able to reach out for individual students to reach out to the school directly and resolve one problem at a time as they come up, in addition to the snow cases. And that's my my final comment. Anybody else have anything before we open for questions? Okay, Sarah, I think that's it. I think we're open for questions now.
All right, wonderful. We've got a few here in the Q&A. The first one is, how many service members are at KSU using TA?
Well, when I took over TA for the Army, I took over TA for everything. So we have about 500. That's a little high. Okay, so closer to 400 students that are active duty, Guard and Reserve, Air Force, Army, and Navy.
Thanks. Next question is, for anyone who has had issues even getting access to the Ignited, adding new users, how long did it take to gain access, and what was the best way to get help?
Jump in, Dominique.
Yeah. So,
he walked us all through this process.
the challenge is having the right person to help you. This is one of the things that our education center wishes they would be contacted more about. Sometimes the education counselors at these centers for the Army, they have certain permissions where they can approve your request, or they can resolve a help desk case issue or a snow case. So the best way, if you're coming across an issue and you can't create your account, if you create a snow case or a help desk case, that's going to be filtered to an Army counselor somewhere on a military installation. So really the best thing you could do is find out which Army base supports your school directly, and then get their contact information and call them when you come across a challenge, so they can pull you up and approve your account. If you do that, it can be fixed within an hour. Help desk cases may take a week because there's 150 pending 150,000 pending snow cases within Army Ignited as of today. So there's a lot of work out there that they're working on.
Thanks, Dominic. This is an excellent question. Are you a Banner 9 institution? And if so, are you using a program to pull the degree information to build the student's SDP? Outside of systematic errors, and we all know there are plenty, has been my biggest issue. The time requirements associated with that file, an expectation for us to have the manpower to build them, is a bit ridiculous. So far, my IT department has not been willing to give the man hours, they think possibly hundreds, to design the interface to do this automatically due to our number of TA students.
Okay, so not a Banner 9 institution, we're a PeopleSoft institution. However, I also come from a Banner institution. And I come from two different banner institutions, the University of West Florida and Colorado State University. Both conceptually do this process very different, but both actually do track the military TA students via the veterans portal and then use some of those triggers. One of those used the degree audit system through College Source, aka JARS. University of West Florida used the degree works system. And what they did is try to build behind the scenes what we did have control of. Where did we not need IT? We used, or we might have used an internal IT resource if we didn't have our own to start to create reports for us from those degree program plans to try and pull in data that we needed. Also looked for, okay, can I think differently or outside the box? Can I look for, do we have any form processes or imaging processes or workflow processes? Where I can start to look outside the box a little bit that can capture and pull that data in for us to try and help forefront some of the information you need so you're not having to do it so manually. We're not 100% there yet for K-State, but Dominique might be able to talk a little bit about what it is you are doing currently, even though we are a PeopleSoft school for the student degree plan.
Thank
How are
you.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you getting that information into the system, Dominique? The student degree plan.
How am I getting the student degree plan? So case by case, I log into our cases website, a student learning management website, and confirm what degree plan they've chosen. And then I create on an Excel document the degree plan based on what our catalog says. I have to add every course that they could potentially take, or at least a placeholder for that course. So it meets at least a minimum standard of 120 credit hours or whatever degree they're doing. I've had to upload degrees at all levels and certificates one time, and then I plan in the future to scrub that list annually. And I'm also on a committee with Global Campus that's doing program development. So I'll be aware of new degrees or certificates that will be published in the future, so I can create the degree plans and upload them. So I have for degree plans, I have a template. Every time I get a new degree plan, I create a template and I save it that way, and then I adapt it for the student, adding their personal information and saving it in a file just for that student, and then I upload it for that student. So I have templates, and then I individualize them as we go.
I will also add, and so this is why Dominique doesn't have that yet, because we're actually working on it as the registrar's office. If you're utilizing any of the big catalog systems to publish your catalog, all of those systems come with, when the curriculum is listed in the catalog, a little link to show the program of study. And that is also maybe a quick cheat. If you click on that, it would take the requirements and lay it out like in a check sheet format, which is kind of what you're looking for, right? And so there's a good starting point maybe to some of that. If you can't connect, like currently we here at K-State cannot connect to our degree audit system yet. It's not in our data warehouse. As soon as it's in our data warehouse, I will be able to, as the registrar, interface and start building reports for Dominique, as well as our veteran services area for veteran benefits.
Excellent question. We have had several folks ask about template examples. If you do have a template example that you would like to share with the group, please feel free to email those to me, and I will collate those and create a resource that we can share with one another. My email address is saraa@mhec.org. And Dominic, if you would be able to, provide a sample template of what you do, that would be great as well.
Sure thing.
Another question is, what mechanisms do you have in place for uploading the files? Do you have built reports, or are you working manually?
I'm doing manually. So I'll create an Excel document. I'll save it as a CSV or CSV file. And then I'll upload the document into Army Ignited directly while the file is still open, so I don't lose any leading zeros in any of those Excel cells that have numbers in them.
You're not doing it, well, he's doing it all manually, but if the data sits in the student information system and we can pull it, there's reports and stuff that you can pull, but you just might have to manipulate it to be in the format you need, right? Like the plan list and stuff like that. So he doesn't have to go find all, 1,000 versions of every single program plan we have. We can extract that from the system and do, but it's maybe not in the format that the portal requires. So that's one of the things we're working on is how we deal with some of those errors.
And Dominic, this is a great question for you. And I think it's more of making sure that folks understand how is it possible that Dominic can manually create degree plans for 500 students? Am I understanding this correctly? And then someone else commented, that's exactly what I was thinking, especially for those of us, I assume most of us that do GI Bill also.
So I, with the template, I don't have 500 templates, right? So if I have 500 students, a lot of them fall under the same degree. So I can use that template and just put in their name and their social and their student ID for the university. And then it's kind of a cookie cutter approach. But I create those templates based on what I get from the university's website, and then I can adapt them per student. So every now and then I have to create a new template. At this point, when we first started doing it, I took the high profile, like high use templates, and I focused on them, graduate programs and bachelor's degrees, and then the associate's degrees. And the last thing I did was, undergraduate, graduate certificates as they come up. So I only create the template once, but I reuse it many times.
And about that template, Dominic, are you utilizing the one that's been provided by Army Ignited?
Yes, yeah, you have to use that Excel document saved the appropriate way, which is a big discussion that we had multiple times last year about how to work with Excel when it loses leading numbers in those cells on an Excel document. So they came up with some weird notepad solution. I create the document in XLS, and then I save it as a CSV or whatever it's called, and I don't close it until I've uploaded the program. I've tested it, and then once it passes verification, I upload it, and then I save it. And just something I've learned to do is if there's an error with your upload, the Army will tell you that there's an error and send you a code, but it won't tell you if you do multiple uploads for courses or degree plans, it won't tell you which one it is. So once you upload something into Army Ignited, it'll confirm that upload on your screen and it'll assign it a number. So I copy that number, I tap it on to the end of the Excel document that I've uploaded, so that if I get an error, I know exactly which document I've done. So this is a experience-based learning process.
I think it is for everybody.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that changed in this shift was you used to be able to upload your degree audit, right? So I didn't have to go create an Excel version of my degree plan. Every student has a degree audit. Some of our graduate programs may not have them fully vetted out, but every single undergraduate student, I could just run a degree, right? I could run a DegreeWorks or a DARS or the PeopleSoft or Banner Deliver, the CAP, and upload those. This new process requires this specific template. So that's one of the things is that now if I can get my degree audit into our data warehouse, can I manipulate that process to put it in this Excel file? Because that's one of the things they changed. So even I've seen some of you talking about like whether it's DegreeWorks, Banner, or whatever, you can automate this degree audit to your heart's content. But if you can't get in this format, they're not going to let you upload it.
And everything you upload has to be in that Excel format.
Yeah.
That's degree plans, enrollments, grades. I don't think graduations have to be that way. But if I want to upload a grade for a student, I have to create an Excel document and upload that grade for that student. I can do a whole lot of grades all at once if I want to, but it just depends on how heavy that workload is that day, whether I put multiple students on one form or whether I do a separate form for each student.
Thanks. We have another question. This goes about, tuition. Does K-State have any students using credentialing assistance in addition to TA? We are struggling to get help getting programs approved for credentialing assistance to help cover fees that TA does not cover.
As a university, doing credentialing is kind of a, well, for us, it's breaking new ground. We're aware, we support credentials, but we didn't, as far as I know, historically ever actually issue the credential ourselves. So we have people working on that, and we're testing it at one location in our Salina campus for some programs that are designed for that, but didn't actually have the test as part of our curriculum. So we will be doing credentialing assistance very soon, but we're not quite there yet.
All right. Another question is, are you all connected with Army School Support Knowledge Community? I was told this is the system that will help.
Yes, I say yes.
Yes.
Thanks to Dominic, you got us connected to that group as well.
One that I know a lot of institutions have had issues with is billing. Our institution bills for some classes using contact hours. This would be for a class that's listed as 6 credit hours, but is billed at 7 contact hours. Army Ignited will not pay for the full invoice showing the 7 contact hours because the enrollment reports show 6 credit hours. Has anyone simply used contact hours on the enrollment reports rather than the credit hours?
I think, okay, so what I know fundamentally from the Department of Veteran Affairs and the Department of Defense is you are either a credit hour institution or you are a, and I'm not going to have the wording right, a contact hour institution. You cannot be both. Every single one of us who has credit hours, all those lead to contact hours, but I can't report both. So I'm either doing my financial aid based off of credit hours, or I am doing my financial aid calculations based off of contact hours, but I can't pick and choose. And so I think that's the problem, is if your institution is a semester-based credit hour institution on record, it's gonna trigger all kinds of things if you're not consistently reporting one way or the other. That is probably most likely why you're running into that problem.
And we've got a couple questions here about ETP. Is it true for the ongoing ETP, all that needs to be done is to approve the education path for a student and upload their coursework in Army Ignited? All the other requirements are on hold?
That is true. The exception to policy, the policy is, of course, that a student has to request TA for a class before the class starts. The ETP is, the issue with Army Ignited is that's interfering with that process. So the exception to policy before was we would have to create a long list and email it to Fort Knox, and then they would approve it. Once the functionality of Army Ignited improved a bit, then instead of sending a list to Fort Knox, we upload the course after the students completed their degree path. And when we upload the class, if it's early enough, the student should still go in and make their TA request. If they miss it or something happened and it's late, you can upload the class, and when the exception to policy, I call it a sweep, they sweep through the website and they're supposed to approve all of the currently uploaded courses. Two issues that come up with that. One is it's not catching everything, or all of our students would have been paid all the way back to last January. And two, make sure that you coordinate with your students and just don't automatically upload courses. So if the student decides not to use tuition assistance for this semester because they want to use it for the next semester, but you upload their classes anyway, and then the ETP comes through, those classes are going to get funded and they're going to get TA applied to the school. And there's no way to cancel a TA request with the new Army Ignited system. There's no way to log in and verify, take a look at all the degree plans you've uploaded to make sure that they're still active. And there's no way to go in and see what students are in what class and what degree plan. There's no way to pull reports out of Army Ignited yet.
And another question related to that are the ETP draws for Invoicing Automatic. That's what the Mighty Networks team explained to me.
They are supposed to be automatic, but there was also supposed to happen like back on March 1st, and it didn't happen. So it's one of these. So what I do is I'm going through now that it's been long enough for each student. I see that they have an unpaid TA request from the beginning of the spring semester. I'm creating a snow case individually for that student and submitting it. Now, what that means is it's going to work its way around to the Education Services Office just down the hall, but it is documented. And if there's ever a question about whether or not that student deserves to get that TA, whether all the actions were taken, we need to still make sure the student is covered and submit the TA for the class, and then do the snow case to show that it was a problem that it was identified and not acted on. So I'm being a little pessimistic when I think with the Army systems to make sure that students are covered. So I want to make sure that every step is taken for them.
Mm-hmm. And kind of coming off that, there's a comment about, we're told to not do student degree plans currently for Mighty Networks. So are you all uploading student degree plans?
I create them individually by student and upload them per student.
And this one I think is kind of interesting. We had this a very similar conversation about this when we had our Army Ignited webinar back in October 2021. Our school is going to start charging credit card fees. I was wondering if you pass along the charges to Army Ignited and the like, or are they exempted?
I can answer that. So they're not necessarily exempt, but we don't have a way to waive that. So it's something that the university actually takes on. It's something that we cover, is the credit card fees. Another thing I wanted to touch on, somebody asked about manual invoicing, and I had answered it because I missed, I did it earlier in the chat, but I did want to touch on it so that everybody's aware of their question. They asked if we had to manually invoice, and yes, I have come across situations where I have to manually invoice because the student was allowed to add a course, and that course is what I invoiced for. I was only made aware of it when Army Ignited flagged my invoice and wrote to me directly and said, we cannot process it because of this enrollment. We need you to do a manual invoice for that person. So they will contact you if a student does need to be manually invoiced. And then for the credit card fees, that is something the university takes responsibility for, at least for us.
And
follow up quickly with this process it's real important for me to work closely with Kimberly. If I know that there's going to be a class dropped, or if there's a student that I'm submitting a help desk case for because he hasn't been paid, I share that information with the sponsorship office at the same time so that they know there's an additional process going on, because they don't see that unless I let them know.
And we just have about 5 minutes left. So Dominic, Kelly, Kimberly, any parting words of wisdom for those out there who are working to really try and help students, get them through this process and make sure that they get those educational goals met?
I'd say from my perspective, so one of the things I know to be true is a lot of you are the experts in this in the day-to-day. You know all the terminology, you know those things. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to learn a lot of that and work with a lot of different people. But what I've learned is, especially in the struggles of changing over in these systems and some of those things, is just do whatever you can to try and explain it up as basic as you possibly can to your administration, who may or may not be overly familiar with the issue, but help them understand, right, as much as you can in the data, who these students are, how these students are important to us, what they bring to the table, not just in the types of students they are, what they're experiencing and learning, but the funding, right, that's guaranteed as part of being in the military TA structure. And that, you know, here's what we don't want to do. And I think being able to bring those conversations and those stories forward, which is what Dominique helped us do very quickly, is bring it up. He's very good at helping to translate some of that into a more functional conversation, right, if need be, or answering the questions in the right way. I think we just use our resources as much as possible and be prepared, right? Pull in partners who can be good partners for us, even if they're people we didn't think about. Like, we all are in 3 totally different areas, so we use the advantage of our 3 VPs as much as possible to try and get that word up and out. How do we help these students not experience more issues because they've already got enough frustration going on with the process that exists for the TA process? We don't want them to reflect that on us as an institution.
Kimberly, any final thoughts?
Yes. So what I want to add to this is that our office and the sponsorship office, we get inundated with calls from TA recipients about their payments, and it gets really frustrating for them. Completely understandable. What's worked for us is taking the time to explain the process specific to our office and how it works for us to the student, and walk them through basically what we do, you know, explaining we go in weekly, and once we see your TA come through, we do the assign and you'll see the credit to your account. And when you walk them through your process, they're more understanding and they're more likely to calm down, because a lot of times we get very frustrated and angry callers. So explaining that, taking the time to walk them through it, can calm their worries and concerns. And then you do have to, on the other side, you do have to let them know, you know, if it comes time where this balance is going to be due, you can either look at your options to pay it. You can pay it yourself, or you can look at an emergency student loan, just something to cover, so that when the Army TA does come in, it's that student is issued basically a refund. But they do take on that responsibility. So you do have to give them their options. You do have to lay it out and just kind of guide them through that step. They're used to having a one-stop shop that tells them everything they need to do. Whereas with TA, they kind of get bounced to different offices. So just take the time to explain your process is really it.
And Dominic, any last thoughts from you? Nope, you're on mute. There you go.
So 2 things. First, if you can log in to Army Ignited, under the tab that says Find Ed Center, if you click on that tab and just type in your state, it'll generate a list of at least one education center that you can call and ask for help. So if you're not quite sure, they may not be the education center that processes your forms and approves accounts, but there'll be somebody with a military person with access to Army Ignited that you can ask questions of. And the second thing is clearly dealing with this issue involves multiple offices. Not represented here today are the Veteran Steering Committee that helps with military and veteran students. That I represent the active duty and Guard Reserve students in conversations with other people across campus. Also, talking with your academic advisors, make them aware of tuition assistance processes, timelines, and problems, because the students will talk to them probably more than anybody else. And if the advisors know at least who to talk to and get information from, then your TA coordinator supports not only the students, but campus-wide offices. So you really become a hub for anybody that has any question. And sooner or later, you're going to be the subject matter expert.
That's right. I've been following along the conversations in the chat, and it looks like we might need to schedule another webinar on the templates that we've gathered, and maybe have folks show some examples of the SIS systems that they use to make all this magic work for their institutions. So if those are webinars of interest, we will be sending out a survey after this webinar. Please complete that and put any kind of other topics that you would like for us to host in that survey as well. And again, I really want to thank you for joining us today. And again, apologies for the technology glitches at the beginning. Thank you so much and have a great day.